Okay, so we created the structure of our website, for our web pages, and we saved it as a template, a Dreamweaver template. Now I'm just going to show you how you can change the look of some of these div tags, some of the colors, margins, gradients, things like that. Then we'll add some text and format the text using CSS. But before we get started, let's look at some of the code. Remember, we made a container, a header, nav bar, an aside, a content area, and a footer. Well, let's look at the code side. Here's our body tag. Here's our container for the HTML, header, nav bar, aside, content, and footer. That's the HTML side. Well, how does it connect to the CSS code? Here's the link to that CSS sheet. And in quotes here, where it says container or header or nav, that's calling up that CSS rule. So let's look at the CSS sheet now. Up here I can click either source code, which is HTML, or movie style CSS. There's my CSS sheet, and there's all those rules that we created. Container, header, nav bar, aside, content, footer. You can also see all the properties that apply to each rule or each selector. Okay, I could always come in here and manually change these. I can change the height and width and color and margins. I can always change those manually on the code side. Sometimes that's easier. I can also change them through the CSS Designer panel. So there's a couple ways to change things in Dreamweaver. Well, before we go any further, let's add one more rule. One we do not have over here is a body CSS rule. I like to go through the design side. Down here in my properties window, I click on the page properties button. We're going to be in our appearance CSS category, and we're going to give this a background color, whatever color you want. Actually, that's a text color. I'm sorry. We'll give it a text color. I'm going to do black for the text color. Background color. And we could also put a background image through here if we had one ready. And then we can also change the links. By default, if I have some text that is a link, it makes it that 1994 icky blue color with an underline. Well, I can change that to whatever color I want. I can change the visited links color. I could change a rollover links if I want, and the active links color. I could also say never underline if I don't like that underline on my links. And then I'm going to say OK. So you see it change the background color, and once we add links, you'll see how the link colors are. The only thing is, if I go back to my code view on my source code HTML page, I see that Dreamweaver puts that body code, CSS code, and those link codes on the top of my HTML page. I don't like that. I want them to be on my CSS style sheet with all my other code, CSS code. So I can go back to my HTML page. I'm going to highlight those rules I just created, those selectors and their properties. Notice I did not select the style type or style line, but everything else. I'm going to cut that, Command or Control X. I'm going to come back to my CSS sheet. I like to put these at the top of the sheet so I can click to the right of that first line of my CSS sheet, click Enter or Return, and Command V or Paste. So I pasted all those body and link tags at the top. Here's my container, header, etc. I can go back to my source code HTML page, code view, and I'm just going to delete those extra 2 lines. I don't really need those, so I can delete those. And let's go back to the design side. Alright, so if I look at the design view through the CSS designer and I click my style sheet, I can see all those selectors, all those rules I made here. Once again, I can change things on this side through the design view, or on the code side through my movies style sheet. I can change those. Alright, so let's do a few changes. I'm selecting on my header, which automatically highlights my header over here. my header selector in the CSS Designers panel, and I have a lot of things I can change. I can change layout, size. If there's any text in there, I can change the font, colors, and such. I could put a border on there if I wanted to. I could change the background image, background color. I'm actually going to add a background image, so I could click this background image section, URL, browse for my image. This should take me right to my images folder, and I have a header JPEG I created in Photoshop that I'm going to insert into the background of my header. So I can double click that, and it should insert that image right into my header. Okay, I could put a border on there, I could put border radiuses, whatever I want. I'm just going to leave the background image in there for now. Next, I'm going to grab my navigation bar. And for that, I'm going to do a background gradient. I can select this gradient box here. It has a default white and red color for my gradient. Well, I can change it by selecting a specific color slider here. And I can select any of these colors over here. Well, if I want to make sure it matches something I already have out here, I can grab this eyedropper, bring that eyedropper out here, and click out here somewhere. And now I have that green from my zombie text. Now I can click my red slider at the bottom, my eyedropper, and select another color, maybe this pink, from that pink drop shadow. Hit enter, and it should have applied the gradient. Why isn't it showing out here? Because certain CSS codes, certain effects do not show up on the design view, but if I go to the live view up here at the top, I'll see that gradient's coming through. Okay. Well, I'm not real excited about that pink, so I could go back and change that. Go back to my CSS designer, click on that gradient. And instead of pink, I think I'm going to take sort of this brownish tone here, brownish gray tone. Yeah, I like that a little bit better. Maybe I'll change it one more time. Instead of brown, I'm going to make it a little bit darker. There will be a little bit more of a transition there from that green to that dark color. So now it gives it a little bit of space, a little bit of shape to that navigation bar. We'll come back later and add the buttons. Let's go in the side panel, or the clicking off of live view and going to the side or sidebar. And for the background for that one, I have a prepared image, so I'm going to browse for that image, and it's just going to be a simple texture, a simple background texture that I can add. It's a JPEG. That way, if I type text, it'll show up on this simple background texture. For my content area, I'm going to do the same texture. And I don't have to do a background texture. I could always do just a color, solid color, or a gradient. Or I could do no texture at all, or no fill at all. I could just have a transparent structure to hold my text in. There we go. Not too bad. And I got my footer. I'm going to select my footer. I'm going to do the background. And for that, I'm just going to do a solid color. I think I'm going to grab sort of that faded green color there. And a little bit darker. Not too bad. I've changed my mind. I want to make that a gradient. So I'm going to click on my gradient and use my eyedropper tool to select the color from my previously made gradient. There we go. Well, I want these colors to switch around, so I'm going to bring the dark one to the top and the green to the bottom. And slide it around like that. And I think that looks pretty good. There we go. Let me preview this in the browser, and this will automatically save it. And there we go. So it's starting to look pretty interesting. I would probably do some changes, but we'll keep it moving. All right, now let's see how we can add some text and format the text. I'm getting off the live view. I'm going to position my cursor within my content area and type something. It's not real important what the text is. I'm just going to show you how to format the text. So I'm going to say this is H1 text, hit enter. This is H2 text, and this is paragraph text. I could always add my H3, 4, 5, whatever. We're just going to do a few of them here. Here's a pretty quick way to adjust the CSS and define some specific text. This text is going to be defined just within the content area here. So if I highlight this text, I'm down here in my properties panel. On my HTML section, I'm going to format this as heading 1 or H1 text. Now I can come over here to my CSS designer panel, to the selectors section, and add a selector. It's going to call this, if you look at the bottom here, hashtag or # container, # content H1. Well, that's sort of redundant. I don't need to say # container, so I can delete that. I just want to say content, # content H1. There it is. Hit enter. Now I can specify specific things about this text. I can change the background color if I need to. Well, maybe I want that nice green, maybe a little bit darker. I can change the font. I'm going to do Gotham. I can change the font style if I want to. I can do oblique. I can change the font variant if I want. I can make it bold if I wanted to. Change the font size. I'm going to change the font size. Instead of these pre-made sizes, I can go for point. And I'm going to make this one 36 point. So you can see it's a pretty big title there. I can change the text line if I want to. I can indent it if I want. I can also do a drop shadow here. I can add a text shadow. If you wanted to do that, you could take the time to do that. I could also put a background color just behind my text. I don't really want to do that. I could go to my layout section and do some padding on the text. I'm going to do the padding of 40 on the right, 40 on the left, and you can see it indents that a little bit. It gives you a little more white space around here. Now I'm going to select my H2 line down here in my properties HTML. I'm going to format that as H2 text. I'm going to make a rule for that. I don't need to say # container, so I'm going to delete that. It just says # content H2. Hit enter. Let's make some rules for that. I'm going to change the text color. This time I'm going to do a nice dark violet pink. I'm going to change the font to Gotham. I'm going to do oblique on that. And I think the font size is good. I could always change that if I wanted to. I'm coming back to the layout section. I'm just going to put that 40 pixels of padding on either side. Hit enter. And then that one's done. So you can see you get a lot of control here. Last thing I do is format my paragraph text. It is already formatted as paragraph text, so let me add some rules to it. Make that a selector. Content paragraph. Hit enter. Text. Color. I just want like a brownish red. Font. Gotham. I'm going to keep the style the same. Font weight the same. The size the same. Only other thing I want to do is add that padding of 40 on the right and the left. I could change that if I didn't want to line up perfectly, but I think I liked them lined up. I like them the way they're lined up like that. Okay. Now let's define some text rules in the sidebar or the aside. I can click on my aside. I'm going to type in the word movies. Click enter. I'm going to type in the name of my movies. Night of the Dead, Return, Day of the Dead, Return, Dawn of the Dead, Enter, Evil Dead. Enter. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's gonna do 6 movies. White Zombie. Enter. King of the Zombies. Enter. The reason I'm typing specific names of movies and text over here is because my sidebar, my header, my nav bar, and my footer are going to be the same on every page. That's why I did not type any specific content over here. I just stylized some generic text because this section is going to change on every page. So let me define the text in my sidebar. I'm going to highlight the word movies. This one I want to make H3. Okay, now I can add in my CSS Designers panel, I can add a rule or a selector, and you can see it's going to be # aside H3. Hit enter. My text, I can change the color if I wanted to. I can select the color from out here. Maybe I like that pink. I can change my font family. I can change my font size if I want. Text align. This one I'm going to align center. And I think that's all I'm going to change. Okay. Now I can position my cursor in any of these words, any of these lines. And you can see it's paragraph text. I'm going to make a new rule for my side paragraph text. Hashtag container is extra code, so I can delete that. Hashtag aside or # aside P. I can hit enter. I can change my font. I can change my font to Gotham. I could change the alignment to center if I want to. You don't have to. I could change the color if I want. I think I'll do a nice dark green color for that one. And hit enter. Okay, I need to make it a little bit darker. There we go. Actually, I don't like that. I'm going to do like a same color as that paragraph text over here. A little bit darker. There we go. So now I have all that formatted, and let's see how we can make some links over here. So I can highlight Night of the Living Dead down here in the Properties panel in the Links section. I can link it to my Night of the Living Dead page. Night, even though I don't have it made yet, I can make a link. Night, I'm just going to call it Night of Dead or night_dead.html. I can highlight my Day of the Dead and do the same thing. Dawn of the Dead. If you haven't seen any of these movies, they're pretty good. Dawn_dead.html, and so on and so forth. Highlight the text down here in the links section in the properties window. Type in the link. Make sure there's no capital letters, no spaces in your page names. We don't have these pages made yet, but we can also always make the links here ahead of time. Okay, so those are all links. Well, I can also make rules for text in the sidebar that's a link. So I can position my cursor back in there, add a new rule. This is an aside, it's paragraph text, and it's A, which means link. Okay, so let me make a rule for the link. Maybe I want to change that color to a different, more of a reddish color. There we go. Now I want to make a hover rule for this link. So there's a hover effect when I move my cursor over them in the browser. I'll position my cursor back in there. In my CSS Designers panel, I'm adding a new selector. It's going to be a repeat hash or number sign aside, PA. I'm going to add this simple little code. Colon, hover, no space bar, just colon, HOVER, hit enter. And now I'm going to go to my text, change the text color so there's a rollover effect. Don't change the font or size or anything else like that, just the color. Okay, and now I'm going to save this and preview it in Safari. Preview in Safari, okay, save, yes. And there we go, now you can see my links to my different pages with the rollover effect, my formatted text, my H1 title or heading, H2, and my paragraph text. Also put in a header, gradients, and some background textures. Next, we'll learn how to add some images, add some nested div tags, and a navigation bar.